Tess, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Just checking.
Thank you for the test.
Yeah, once it's on, so you can
Hi, Crystal. It's Sarah. I just wanted to make sure that you can hear us okay. We're just about to get started.
You sound great.
Great. Thank you.
Some hot tea instead. That's why I'm drinking coffee as well. All right, Sarah, you set? Okay, perfect. Well, it is the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and call the meeting of Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 to order. Please join me for a flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbach,
Present.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Ms. Nelson,
Here.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
Ms. Duncan,
Here.
Ms. Timshute,
Here.
and Mr. Knox will be here momentarily.
Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? No ceremonial matters, so we'll move on to special reports, government to government. Boards, committees, commissions. Municipal departments. School district. Students and guests. All right, and we do have a special report tonight from the Pathways Coalition. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Assembly. My name is Carrie Sagal. I work for the school district under the STEPS grant, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about some of the work of the Pathways Coalition over the last couple of years. Pathways Coalition started about 2008 when a group of 10 or so Sitka agencies, and you know the agencies, SAFE, school district, Sitka counseling, the tribe, met together to take on the task of reducing domestic violence. And they've met ever since because they share families, they share clients, they share to some extent missions. In the recent years, we have concentrated on communication, making communication better between families, children, and agencies. And some of the strategies we've employed are very simple. If the Sitka School District has information about child find to get out to the world, it will send copies of information to all the agencies who then share it with their clientele and their email list. That's a simple way. The past couple of years, we've been looking at Sitka Kids Facebook page and the Sitka Kids webpage. And I'd like to go ahead and share those resources with you. So I'm going to share my screen and choose this. And I'll start with the Sitka Kids Facebook page. That's this page here. It's a Facebook page that really the whole purpose of this page is it creates a digital bulletin board and shares all the information that children organizations put out. So it could be a sports group, it could be the school district, it could be a classroom, it could be the tribe SNP program. So I'll scroll down and show you a few things. I'll show you this picture here because it's delightful. And that's the winner of last month's photograph competition where we're showing families cooking together. So kind of taking a page off of Sitka Chatters that has the monthly photographic competition. This pen to the top is this month's, and it's about reading together. So far, we haven't had any submissions, but you'll see that we've reached 619 people with 115 engagements. And with engagements, it might be a like, it might be a click on this Evan Zervitz beautiful picture of a father reading to his children. If you go down, you can see the kinds of posts we did. When COVID hit, we sort of went from posting activities to trying to connect families to services. So this is something that Jean Swanson just put out from the tribe. I believe it was Jean, and it's about getting some help with paying your bills. And so we reposted, and you can see here too, we have a pretty good reach with some engagements. If you scroll down, this is, we always repost what Sitka Imagination Library produces because they hit 271 families in Sitka, and our 470 people who like us tend to be people with children 0 to 5. A couple other examples before I go to the other page. This was just announcing a radio program today on KCAW. This is congratulating the Social Services Department of the tribe. And then I'll try to find you an example of a more typical posting. But now that we're in COVID, it's a little harder to find those postings where organizations are advertising opportunities for children. This other website we started just this last year, sitkakids.com. You can see it. It's appearance-wise, it looks a lot like the Facebook page. And theoretically, it's a page that any parent could go to and find out whatever they needed to know for their child. And we're not there yet. We're in experimental phase. We're asking people to evaluate it, but I'll just show you a couple of things. The main page, main page here has a place where you can contact us. And this is a place where you can evaluate us. So there's a Google form in here where you can evaluate us and give us some information. Let's see if I can scroll down. This is that same idea of a digital bulletin board where you can go and see what's happening in town. We post out some of the organizations that have been doing a lot with children during COVID are, of course, the library and 4-H have a lot of things going on, and SNP with its various programs. So those are 3 organizations that have continued to kind of soldier on during a time when it's hard to meet with children. You can, if you have a flyer that you would like posted, you can post it here by clicking here, and you can add it, and then we monitor to make sure that it's appropriate for the website. This is a resource that this next resource comes from the Health Summit, the Community Resource Guide. We're just hosting it here. So this is like the print version of not only what you need for families 0 to 5, but all of Sitka. So it's a really useful resource that everybody should know about. And the easiest place I think you can find it is on Sitka Kids. I'll show you one other tab, and that'll be it. You see if I can find where the mouse is. The mouse, oh, there it is. So I'll scroll up and I'll hit activities and Sitka activities. And we have a bit of a way to go here, but these are some of the organizations that are providing activities for children at this time. I found that since March, the organizations are doing a less of a good job of sharing their flyers out. So I hope that at some point we return where we are constantly being deluged with flyers. One of the things that I'd like to see is it's easy enough to say, oh, you contact 4-H by hitting here, but often that front page for organizations doesn't really get parents to what they really need, which is a pathway into the person they need to speak to. So that's something we'll be working on. Any questions? Well, thank you for letting me present.
Yeah, appreciate all the work on that and getting the word out so that Sitka families do know that this resource is out there.
And we do clearly know that people are using the Facebook page, because I'll have an agency person who said, oh, you know, I got a referral, and the referral happened because someone saw this posting on, you know, Sitka Kids. The other page is an experiment to see what we can do with it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Richard Ween, and I would like to thank Carrie for that interesting presentation. It looks like a great resource. What I'd also like to note is that it's been very cold here in Sitka. I think last night, at least on my thermometer, it went down to 10 degrees. I know that some cities have temperature policies, especially as it relates to the homeless. And my question to the Assembly is, do we have a policy for temperature? If so, how are we enacting it? I think that this is extraordinary weather, and especially in our times, we need to be sensitive to the issues. Yes, we did give 5 minutes worth of totem square respite for individuals, but it's actually on nights like tonight and yesterday that we need to be mobile. And in essence, we need to know who these people are, where they are, and to be assured that they are cared for, at least to be brought into a warm environment. Again, I do not know what the policies are or how we're looking after this particular group of Sitkans. I'd also like to list my wish list. I'd like to see a formal update of the seaplane base. And the reason for that is things have changed dramatically on how things are going. It's going to be $1 million cost to the city. And I think that a timely discussion should be had to see if any issues have changed and what the current direction is. Another part of the update is the airport redo, because part of the payment for that has to do with passenger fees based on flights. And I would certainly like an update to know how much the finances of this project has been affected. And again, this is, I think, part of what the Assembly needs to address to the city so we know where we are going. And I apologize for this one, but I do want to see a written report from blank Rome as to what they're up to, a formal report. What are they getting? 6 figures plus? And I'd certainly love to read to see what's up with them. The good news is the scrapyard collected almost 150,000 pounds of scrap, and we actually are paying for shipping, but the bottom line is shipping is going to go up. So, and that includes the CPI. The numbers are coming out, I believe, tomorrow from the Fed, and it looks like it's heading towards 4% maybe, or something like that. And that affects everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else or persons to be heard? Any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that'll bring us to consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we could pull items B and C.
Items B and C have been pulled.
The reason, would you like the reason now, or would you like to
No,
wait?
we're good.
Okay.
So consent agenda consisting of items A, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approving the minutes of the January 21 and 28 26, excuse me, assembly meetings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the meeting. Is there any public comment?
Richard Ween. Writing minutes is an art. And I'd like to thank Sarah because there were some of those condensations of the financial data. And those are particularly hard to summarize in the form of minutes, et cetera. So I do read the minutes. I enjoy them with a cup of hot cocoa. And I just want to thank you because you've always done an outstanding job with minutes. And this one particularly because of the financial aspects. So thank you, Sarah.
Is there any other comments on approving the minutes? Sarah?
Mayor Eisenbach,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
and Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
Brings us to item B.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-03 on first reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 electrical department international crane.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment?
This is a supplemental appropriation. The original.
Sorry, if we could have your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Richard Ween. This is a supplemental appropriation, which was in the form of $370,000. And this is asking for $25,000 more. What is interesting is that we certainly clearly need this item, but seeing that this is money going from the electrical department to the central garage, meaning enterprise fund to enterprise fund. And I was curious to know why this cross-enterprise funding, because I was led to believe in the past that enterprise funds need to be self-sustaining. And how is this, how are the financing of this occurring? Also, since it's coming from the electric operating fund, I know that electric has been a little challenged with their funding. And so it would be interesting. And I know you're going to be going over that soon in the assembly, but inquiring minds want to know about enterprise fund transfers.
Any other comments on the appropriations? Back to the assembly. Mr. Mosher.
I'm in support of this. I just noticed this when I was going through the packet. Historically, since I've been on the past 2 years, we haven't really made a habit of putting supplemental appropriations ordinances into the consent agenda. And although I'm going to support both of these, I have learned that a lot of people in the public listen to these meetings. And so when we put it in a consent agenda and kind of roll over it, it doesn't give people the opportunity to hear the discussion. At least I feel that way. So that's why I pulled them. I wanted them to be able to be talked about individually, but I do support this.
Any other, Rebecca?
Just as a quick clarification, I don't think it would have applied here anyway, but for Mr. Leach, what is the discretionary amount that you can fund and that department heads can fund? Up to what amount?
I'm not clear on the question.
If you need to just write a check, how high can you go?
Well, it depends on if the appropriation was approved through the budget, and then we would spend within that. Any supplemental appropriation, even if it's for a few dollars outside the budget, would need to be brought forward, but everything else would be outlined. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but the procurement section of our code will have the different levels and the requirements.
I know where to look. Thanks.
Anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
On the motion to approve ordinance 2021-03 on first reading, Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
and Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0, and second reading will be heard on February 23rd.
Item C, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-02 on first reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 bulk water line at Gary Paxton Industrial Park.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment to the ordinance?
This is Richard Ween, and this supplemental appropriation is for the bulk water pipeline, which has been leaking. There have been 2 repairs to it in very recent history, which have not held, and a more substantial repair has to be done. This is in part in partnership with NSERA, and it is important to note, I had seen the pictures when I was at the GPIP meeting. This is something that certainly needs to be done and is very important for NSERA, as the water line at this point helps feed the hatchery. One important notion is that I appreciate everything that NSERA does for us, but the truth is they are the main beneficiary of any of this work, meaning the $74,000 that is being requested. And so my notion is, last time I looked, NSERA had a pretty healthy bank account. And so my suggestion would be to get them to pay in full. And if we do hit the raw water bonanza, that maybe we could pay them back. This money comes from the Raw Water Fund, which currently has about $846,000 in it. And they're going to be moving $74,000. And that means that that's additional monies that will not necessarily be available for other types of purposes. So as much as NSERA is appreciated, and they do get the water for free, that I think it would be a wonderful gesture, especially in the times coming up for the city, to kick this in. And maybe the city should just give them an IOU and we can have better, clearer idea of what we can afford. So thank you.
Is there any other public comment to the motion? Back to the assembly. All right, Sarah.
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2021-02 on first reading, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
and Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item C, and second reading will be February 23rd.
Thank you. Brings us to unfinished business, item D.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-01 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2021 potential sale expense former Sitka Community Hospital site.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment?
Good evening. This is Richard Ween. On this item, and I've spoken to this before, it's $30,000 for professional services related to the sale of Sitka Community Hospital. My prior opinion was that this $30,000 should be saved, that it should be a lease agreement with search. There are certain lands in the city that should not be sold, especially because of the value potentially in the future and its potential development value should things not go the way that people think in the future in healthcare and Sitka. And I think we need to hold on to it. It is something very easy to do a lease agreement. Long-term, I suggested that you just give the building to Search. But we lease it. This is something that should not be given away. And some of you may remember the asset purchase agreement that we had for the corpus of Sitka Community Hospital. And that was kind of a super duper giveaway. And I only fear that if we do this sale, that we will be losing a valuable property, and somehow we may not be getting its true value. So if you feel that, it's necessary to give valuable property away, please do. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment to the motion? Assembly? All right, Sarah.
Okay, on the motion to approve ordinance 2021-01 on second and final reading, Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
No.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-1 on item D, and that's first reading, or excuse me, second and final reading.
New business, item E.
I move to approve resolution 2021-03 on first and final reading, submitting city and borough of Sitka fiscal year 2022 state legislative priorities to state of Alaska and 2021 legislature.
Second.
John, did you have something on this one?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I'll try to be brief here. So first of all, the legislative priorities list is put together. I own the delay on this one. Typically, we do this in the November, December timeframe, and I think I've explained to you before. We were a little busy at the moment with, that was when we had a spike in cases, and we don't have a community affairs or public relations, government relations position. So this one boiled back up to the top, and we've got our infrastructure requests that are due in CAPSIS next week. So I wanted to get these legislative priorities at least agreed upon and supported with a resolution, so then I can speak with the Assembly's voice and get these entered into CAPSIS to get them in front of our legislators. So I guess a couple things we're looking at here tonight is, one, the resolution more or less, the language says, we support the legislative priorities here, but if I encourage you to reorder these if you would like. I started with last year's legislative priorities and assumed that anything that was top priority then is still top priority now. And then I kind of did my best to prioritize them with my opinion. I got one input from Mr. Knox and made a small change there. And then really it was just, how do I move them around to get them to fit on the page so I can have one card to be able to send to the legislator. So I'm looking forward to any discussion on moving these around if you feel there's different priorities due. Thanks.
Thank you. And then that'll bring us to public comment on our legislative priorities.
Legislative priorities are certainly necessary and they're important. One thing I found in the past is, I don't know who's listening at the legislature per se. Be nice to hear the voices of our elected officials every once in a while come to the meeting and talk about them, especially if we give them, just to give us a heads up of what's real and what's not. For the public, the legislative priorities are the Green Lake, the haul out, funding for the airport project, tideland transfers and funding for the seaplane base, support for the Alaska Marine Highway, school bond reimbursement, removal of FERC restrictions on Green Lake, support for shore utility upgrades, bringing in the notion that we'll need them for the Coast Guard and search. And my question is, with that one, who's going to pay for it if nobody else pays for it? And it'd be nice to see some of these costed out. This one, I don't think was costed out. There was the police building, the community, assistance program to be continued, stable funds for schools, which is would be a nice thing, Fed help for infrastructure, and which was deferred due to COVID. My back of the paper estimate of this, when I add it up, is about $50 million ask on what was listed, but I think it's closer to probably $75 million. And so certainly a wonderful wish list, but it seems that there is a great divide between us and our federal delegation and our state delegation as far as giving us information. If they were to give us information, then we might be able to focus on more appropriate asks. But I'm afraid to say that that's not happened. And my guess is it probably never will. So thank you and good luck.
Is there any other public comment regarding our legislative priorities? Back to the assembly for, oh, so yeah, Sarah has one person to call for public testimony. Thank you.
Hello, this is Linda.
Hey, Linda, it's Sarah calling from the assembly meeting. We are at the item that you wish to provide testimony on. If you can state your first and last name for the record, and then your time will begin.
Hi, this is Linda Benton. I'm testifying on behalf of Alaska Longline Fishermen's Association. And I appreciate you taking public input on this really important agenda item. We urge you on behalf of our full membership, which is just under 200 fishermen, deckhands, vessel owners, most of which are based here in Sitka, to prioritize the working waterfront boatyard haul out item from this list. As you know, we have been working hard to try to find a solution and a path forward for Sitka's haul out and boatyard. It's absolutely essential to Sitka's fleet and therefore Sitka's economy that we have a working, high quality boatyard here in Sitka for our small boat fleet. The bigger boats that come through here are the tenders, a full complement of boats that depend on Sitka to haul out. We see a really state-of-the-art boatyard eventually located here with excellent workspace for the marine trades. It's an education program for people pursuing the trades and innovations in hybrid propulsion systems. But to get there, we need the city's help. We need a prioritizing of this legislative issue. There's right now a bill that's been introduced to make money available through GO bonds for this kind of work. If it's a priority, it will certainly help our representatives to include the boatyard into that bill and to move forward with support. And that support is really desperately needed right now to get this project off the ground. So on behalf of our membership, I would ask that you make that your #1 priority on this list, and that list be communicated to our representatives to push forward on Sitka's behalf. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, that'll bring it back to the assembly for deliberation on our legislative priorities.
Yeah, I had a question for John, and this, might help us frame some of this as we go forward, but has Blank Rome and Mr. Markley, have they both seen this list so far? And they've been able to provide some comment or suggestion?
Yes, they've both seen the list, and Mr. Markley helped with some of the language in here to make it a little more concise and to the point. And Blank Rome responded, and I'm not sure if I shared that with the assembly or not yet, but they're willing to take this forward on our behalf. But he also responded with a list of programs that are available right now that can target most of these items that we'll go after.
Okay.
Some of them we have to wait for the NOFO or the notice of funding to come out before we apply for them. But I have a pretty substantial list of opportunities available to us to cover some of these.
So to follow on that, when they are looking at this, or more specifically, when the delegations are looking at this, do they really see these in order of priority as like, if, whatever's number one on there, they see and they think, okay, that's their highest priority, we're going to go after that, or that's something in my wheelhouse, I can do that. Or, I mean, in the days of lobbying that I did, one of the things that you kind of assumed is you went to people who had your interests in mind and you brought that priority to them, and then you had other things that you went to other people for. If we bring this forward, I would suspect they're going to go through this and see where, what committees are going to be most appropriate for their strengths, and then what their priorities are for us too. So does the order really matter that much, or?
In my opinion, I don't think the order really matters that much. I mean, that's more for public consumption here. I want the public to see that these are the ones that are really important to the Sitka community.
Yeah.
But our lobbying firms, and as we see grant opportunities available, we're absolutely going to pick from this list and have certain individuals that we bring these items to one by one.
Excellent, thanks.
A couple of things. One is more of an observation. In my experience, we often have to have something on this list for a number of years before it has a realistic chance of getting some funding. So even though the police department is pretty far down the list, we've got to keep these on the list. And like I said, I don't think the order matters much at all. If it did, I would say we should put the 70% up at number 3 and probably, or 2 or whatever. But like I said, it just because it's far down the list doesn't mean we're not paying attention to it. It's more, we're trying to get it on the radar in some instances, trying to get it on the radar so that eventually they'll just get really sick of us asking and give it to us. So anyway, that's it.
Valerie?
Personally, I think it does matter how they're numbered. And I would say that the working waterfront should be first and foremost, and Green Lake should be second. The airport terminal, I think, should still be 3. The seaplane base, it's been on the radar for already the 2 years that I've been on the assembly this time. And I think that that's dropping in priority to me in light of what's going on economically with our community. I think it should fall below the Alaska Marine Highway System, and the school bond debt. And I also think that the police department could still be looked at and could still be made to fit at the Sitka Community Hospital property. I know that I'm in the minority here, but those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Anything else from the assembly on this one? Kevin?
I think the one with about the ferries, I think in light of the fact that that the large cruise ships aren't going to be coming through, and that the fact that the ferries could make end runs between Bellingham and Ketchikan without having to make a stop and should be able to, allowed to go through, it seems. It seems like the state has an excellent opportunity in front of it. I was chatting with somebody about how it would be fabulous to see those ferries packed again with RV travelers, backpackers, and others. You know, the solarium deck and the back deck full of tents like it used to be. That would be excellent to see. And I think having this item on here has been a perennial for us, but the state has a real opportunity here to make things better for that system, given, you know, the state of affairs right now. I would say that I think that the seaplane base, I would like to see it stay where it is. We've invested quite a bit of time and resource into the project, and it's a priority within the community and has some real potential impact and growth impact there. So I'd like to see it stay where it is at this point. I think it's still something that we need to continue with. So thanks.
Yeah, I just saw a report from Rainforest Data today that ferry ridership was 200,000 plus the year prior. Last year, there was only about 35,000 people who rode the ferry. So lots of opportunities, but it's going to be hard to get those numbers back up to a level that the state is going to find sustainable. Valerie?
If nobody else wants to go, part of the reason for the reduction, of course, was COVID. People weren't able to travel because of restrictions on work environments. If you traveled, you had to, a lot of employers would not let you come to work and they wouldn't pay for you to quarantine. So I think if the state were to take their head out of their patooties, they would understand that. And it's also been stated that our ridership went down. Well, when we got that fast ferry here, my friend was manager at the ferry terminal. Those ferries were coming in packed. They were going out packed. The reason that we have low ridership is we can't rely on them anymore. I have a sister that's purchasing a vehicle in Juneau. We get one ferry from Juneau this month, one ferry. If it doesn't break down or if it isn't diverted to some other community that gets better service than us or has a bigger emergency. So I have lobbied for this for over 20 years, written to our state legislators, written to the people in DC. Matter of fact, in going through and purging some of my stuff, I found some of those old letters and the responses about how they realized how important the ferry system is. But it seems like, you know, since Robin Taylor, it's not been important to Sitka. Thank you.
And I would definitely agree with your thoughts on why ridership is down. I think that's exactly why it is.
Yeah, my thought was in order to be able to use the ferries, you have to actually have a ferry with a run. And if there's no ferry, you can't get on it.
John?
So I think I'm at the point where a motion might be helpful, but I just want to reiterate what I've heard and see if this is the direction we're going. I've heard support for swapping priorities number 1 and number 2 and putting the working waterfront above the Green Lake Hydro plant. And I'm okay with making that change. I don't think the priorities make too much of a difference when I bring this to our lobbyists. And this is where a motion would be helpful. I've heard support for the seaplane base moving down, and I've also heard for it to stay in place. And if we want to move the Alaska Marine Highway system up higher, kind of looking for some direction there. But in my mind right now, I have 2 and 1 swapped, the airport terminal staying where it is, and then possibly the Alaska Marine Highway going to number 4, followed by the school bond debt at 5, and then the seaplane base, or is that not? I'm okay with any of them. I just looking for some guidance.
I personally don't have any issue with the order that they are currently in myself. I don't care to see them moved around.
I do have an issue because when we talked about the seaplane base, when I was first elected in 2018, we still had herring fisheries and there was a big call for places for people to put their planes. We have a small user group right now of seaplanes. And I think that if we can't get the funding, to do it, then we ought to look at maybe Plan B and fixing up what we have. Thank you.
You want to make a motion? Valerie?
All right, I would make a motion to move the Sitka's working waterfront to number 1 and the Green Lake hydro generation plant renovation to number 2. I would like, and to also move the Alaska Main Highway sustainable system to number 3. And make the Rocky Gutierrez Airport Terminal Projects 4 and the Seaplane Base 5.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to shift the order of some of our legislative priorities. Is there any public comment?
Priorities in part have, Richard Ween, priorities in part have to be related to what will sustain Sitka. And clearly Green Lake and the haul out are top priorities. I think that the Alaska Marine Highway needs to be up there, but there are issues which I won't speak about now. The police building is actually a wish, and I do believe that it is important that you stay focused, because this is a $50 to $75 million ask, and you want to know what's realistic. And though Blank Rome may say this is realistic, it would be nice to get a bigger sense of priority and what's possible from our legislators. So Green Lake, haul out, the airport. And as I mentioned before, I think that the airport needs to be revisited, not the airport, the seaplane base needs to be revisited and have kind of a concentrated discussion as to where you're really going with this and where do you want to see it go? Because right now it is pretty unclear in relation to what's happening economically. And it will also cost $1 million. So thank you.
Any other comments to reordering our legislative priorities? Assembly discussion? Tor?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with most of that. And like I said, I don't really think it makes a huge difference, but if we're going to say these are our real priorities, I think the asking the state to honor their agreement on school bonds should be way up there. I mean, that's, I finally would put it at number 3, just because it's going to have the most immediate effect on our bottom line. And honestly, they need to be reminded, the state does, that they are breaking an agreement that they made with us. And, if we ever manage to, if they did that, I think we'd be looking at pretty close to the next year or two being able to drop that the summertime percentage. As I recall, we had a reserve built up a little bit. We had to use it because they reneged on it. And so, but I know that's not on here right now, but if we're saying that the order matters, that I would really like to see that at least at number 3.
Rebecca?
This is a question for Mr. Leach. We could talk for quite a while about the order of this, but it also depends on the pots of money that we're asking for this to come from is not always going to be one pot. So having it in a particular order is more a message to the community. And so if there's funding available for item number 8, our lobbyists are going to go after number 8, correct? Okay, so I would really urge staff as much as possible to go after these other opportunities that you're looking at because of the size of this, but I'm going to agree to whatever order we come up with, because to me, everything on here feels pretty essential. But that working waterfront, I agree with Member Nelson, that's probably my number 1 on this list, just because it's so critical, but everything on here is, so thanks.
Kevin, did you have something? Other Kevin?
I'll vote for this amendment. I basically agree with just about everything everyone said here. This is all super important. I don't think that the order necessarily is matters as much as where the money is. We'll go after that. I do agree with what Tor said, that the school bond reimbursement is really important. They reneging on a promise. So I'm okay with voting on this as is. I don't think if we moved it, it's going to change anything with the state and make them have more money to give us. But thank you.
Anything else from the assembly on the amendment?
This is Crystal here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I just want to weigh in that I agree with the 70% bond debt for schools. I would move that up as a higher priority. When I look at number 11, I'm not quite sure what that means to the state. It looks like a general agreeable statement, but I don't know how they're going to prioritize funding based on that. And then I'm glad that the Marine haul out got moved up as a priority. We definitely got a lot of communication from the public about that. But I know that we're in the midst of putting out a RFP, which says we want you to be able to fund this project. So this is separate from that, right? Regardless, we're moving forward with the RFP. This is just us saying that this is a high priority for our community. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Knox?
So I'm not necessarily in support of moving the seaplane base down, but I think it's also important for us to come forward with a unified, totally unanimous support of the priorities that we have, just to show that these are strong, that we are serious about getting all of this work done, and these are top for our community, and making sure that we remain viable, healthy, and a happy community. So for that reason, I'll be voting yes on the change.
Last comments on the amendment.
Yeah, can we read it off one more time? I wrote down numbers and then I lined through them. I want to know what our current priority list is.
Yes, please, Sarah, if you could read the amendment back.
So the amendment would be listing the waterfront as number 1, Green Lake, number 2, the highway system, number 3, the airport, number 4, and the seaplane base, number 5.
Does that answer your question, Crystal?
Yes, thanks.
Awesome.
Could you repeat that, Sarah?
Waterfront, number 1, Green Lake, number 2, ferry, number 3, airport, 4, and seaplane base, 5. Are we ready to vote on that?
Please, on the amendment.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbaz,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Ms. Duncan.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0 on order.
On the off chance the order makes a difference, I move to move the state reimbursement bond debt to number 3.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded to move the current item of, I know, state bond. Where it is 6, yeah. So what's currently listed as number 6 on the sheet, however, that is now a different number, to number 3. Is there any public comment?
Again, this is Richard Ween. Again, bond reimbursement is very important. And we know that the state, in quotes, made a promise, but this is kind of like getting blood from a stone. I don't know whether you've been following the current Senate Finance Committee work, and you'll know that they have a lot of work to do. But as I said before, this needs to be directly communicated to our state legislators, and both of those individuals need to give us a statement as to what is the current status of bond reimbursement. And that doesn't seem to be a big ask. So
And
we
the motion
know
on the
what
floor
is
is
here.
the order, not
Oh.
not contacting the legislators.
But that helps with the order. If we really know what's going on, then the order can be prioritized. If they're saying, no way this is going to happen this year, then we can put something else in there. That's
Okay,
why
that's
the
not the
order is
motion on the
important.
floor.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
appreciated.
Is there any other public comment to bumping up school bond reimbursement on the priority list? Assembly discussion, Valerie?
And I just want to point out, I know that at the last meeting, the conflicts were disclosed, but just because they're disclosed once doesn't mean that you don't have to disclose them each time one of these things comes up. And so I would encourage the assembly members that have family members or that work for the school district to disclose. Thank you.
Debt bond has nothing to do with the schools. That is purely with the city.
Is there any other assembly deliberation on bumping up the school bond debt reimbursement? Sarah?
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbach,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, and that brings us back to our original resolution as amended in order. Final assembly comments on that? Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve this resolution on first and final reading, Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Himshoot,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mayor Eisenbach.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 on item E.
Item F, please.
I move to approve the resolution 2021-04 on first and final reading, authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for the National Renewable Energy Laboratories Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Project.
Second.
Did you guys get stereo next time?
John, you had something on this one?
Yeah, I've got a lot of information on this one. So I know it was getting close to break time, but I'll go through this as quick as I can here. I received a lot of letters of support for this application. This application is the city asking the National Renewable Energy Lab if they will support us through their Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Project, ETIP. We had been working on this application for a few months on our own. And like I said, we got a lot of letters of support. We weren't necessarily soliciting for those letters of support, but they do show the importance of this initiative to our community. Something I'd like to point out, because this does bring in our climate action task force, and this is something they wanted to work on. And I did respond to a few of them and say, hey, you guys aren't even organized yet, and that's coming up, and that's great. And I'm excited that you're willing to work on these things. And we are working on it. And once that group is established and organized, I think they're going to have a much more powerful singular voice to us. So we're going to keep moving forward with this because of the deadline on the 15th. But something I want to point out is when the first climate group was established, I think it was 2010, something we heard is they put this plan forward and nothing happened. And I want to provide you and the public with some numbers. So in that report, it talked about our greenhouse gas levels in a 2003 numbers and some later 2006 numbers. in that plan, it said the goal for the municipality was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 25% from the 2003 numbers. In 2003, the municipality, which includes all of our facilities and our vehicles, produced 3,732 tons of CO2, greenhouse gas emissions. 81.6% of that was from our facilities and 14.7% of that was from our vehicles. In 2006, that number was 3,728. Well, we've since brought on the utilities at the PAC, so that added a little bit of a burden on our facilities. But with the PAC added, that means from those numbers, we needed to reduce our emissions by 1,005 tons to hit that goal. And it said we needed to hit that goal by 2020. Right now, on our own, by implementing our interruptible power program, our total reduction from municipal buildings and vehicles is 2,407 tons of CO2. That equates to a 64% reduction from those 2003 numbers. So we far exceeded our 25% goal. So our application will further help us gain expertise in capturing all of the possible renewable energy sources at our hydro facilities and delivering it to our community. And that's the point I want to make, is that we as a city are going to do our best to make sure we capture every single source of renewable energy and provide it to the individual. So the individual is still going to need to do their part. And that's why I'm explaining these numbers here, is we've got a big reduction in what we're doing in the city now, and we're going to continue to deliver that. But part of this is going to have to be the individual. Once we deliver and start planning out these initiatives, the individual is going to have to make that change as well. So this application will really help us dial in our future needs. And other than the staff time it takes, this is a lab that's working for the U.S. Department of Energy. Other than the staff time, if we get this, they're going to come in and be our advisors. And if we don't get that advisor, we were already looking at doing a rate study and our maintenance needs, and this could be very helpful in deferring some of that cost as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you for the detail on that one. Is there any public comment to submitting this application, the ETIP application?
Good evening. This is Richard Wien. This application is to NREL. And NREL stands for National Renewable Energy Lab. And it's very interesting because, again, inquiring minds want to know, and I look them up and see who they are. Even though I know that now all of a sudden there's a deadline, so you gots to do it. That doesn't mean you have to accept it. But a couple of things about this place is that it's not a 990 place, meaning a 501c3. It is an LLC. And I invite people to look up what limited liability corporations are. I don't know whether it's a partnership or a corporation, but one of the ways that does is it limits liability to its partners. And you get to funnel money through your individual income tax as opposed to doing other things and being liable. So already that kind of like goes, okay. I followed the path to some of the corporations that they're associated with, but one which was particularly interesting, which was Sunspot One. And as you may or may not know, they don't fill out 990s, but they fill out a form 1065 if they're a partnership or an 1120 if they're a corporation. And what I found is that at least in one repetition, that it's a foreign limited license corporation. So they began to file as a foreign entity. Again, I still have a lot more background work to do, but one thing I did find is that they're basically data collection groups. They collect lots of data on things, and I'm sure that they do wonderful things with it. But as you know, with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, nothing is free. You get this stuff for free, but they're collecting stuff. And so the question is, if there were more time, if we weren't under the gun, I would want to know a little more in depth, because the memo that was presented, I really don't know who these people are. And I don't know what they want. And though its cost will be staff labor, my question becomes, I've always seen the mantra from the assembly was, we don't want to overburden our burdened staff. And so that needs to be defined. What do staff costs mean? So there are a lot of things here that I find need explanation. So if this didn't have this super duper deadline, I'd probably say table it. Let's get a little more information to explain to the population in order to be transparent and go from there. So look it up, LLC.
Is there any other comment to the application? Seeing none, back to the assembly for deliberation. Valerie?
Do we have a super duper deadline? I mean, maybe I missed it in reading all this stuff, but does this have to be approved tonight?
The application deadline is February 15th under the program. So we won't be meeting as an assembly before that next meeting, or before the application deadline, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, with that explanation, I was a little bit curious about all your numbers about how we figured out how much we have reduced our CO2 emissions. I mean, I can't remember how long it was we had the incinerator, so that certainly counts for a whole heck of a lot of emissions. But did we have somebody on staff putting all these numbers together on an ongoing basis, or did we just start doing this when the last climate task force was in session? Thank you.
I can answer that. We have a member on staff, and Scott's in here if I can ask him questions if he needs to come up, but I think I got this one. We have a member of staff who, as we were submitting this application, needed to collect some of this data to kind of show our efforts thus far and how we're a good candidate to make those efforts better. So it was one of our staff members in the electric department that put together a spreadsheet that I won't even begin to try to translate it right now, but showed me those emissions rates, and they were based on our purchases of heating fuel and fossil fuels and how that's gone down over the years.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with this. You know, it's a DOE, I guess, initiative. And I don't see how it can hurt us really by trying to better identify ways we can be more efficient. Because every time I look at things like this, is quite often the more ecologically sound decision is more efficient and saves us money in the long run. And that's always nice to have that. So I don't see how this can hurt us. It might help us a lot. It might not, but I have no problem supporting this.
Rebecca?
At I think the most recent school board meeting, there was a discussion about how to make the schools more efficient, and many people did not realize that the schools had moved to a boiler system that allowed us to not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also save the district money by using interruptible power for heat. And so when these good things happen, I would like it to be more known in the community. We need to, you know, celebrate our successes when we have them. This is, to me, to get this kind of expertise, I don't really care who the organization is if they have the expertise and we're able to get that expertise. I trust our professionals at the electric department to know what their department needs. And if they've asked for this, and I trust that they know their resources as far as who are the people who can best help with the energy future of Sitka. So with an eye to where we're headed as a community and our energy needs down the road, I'm guessing that city staff is well equipped to tell us what they need. And this is our way of being able to help them get what they need. So I'll absolutely support this.
Yeah, and
Kevin?
I like the short and long-term opportunities and prospects for this. Having the short-term piece here with our needs around Green Lake, having something like this and, another highlight, essentially a star saying, Sitka's, on the right path, but needs to stay on the right path, and we need help with Green Lake. DOE being in the picture here, that helps with that. Long-term, we all know that at some point we run out of capacity and we got to start talking about what we're going to do. So, this is a great opportunity for looking down that path as well.
Valerie?
I can support this in light of it's not going to cost us anything other than staff time. But if staff comes back and says, we need an extra body, then I'll be having second thoughts if I'm still seated at this table. And as far as like the compilation, I'm not doubting it, but it's nice to see a report sometimes as to what's going on. And some of you weren't here this evening when I left the little spreadsheet on in front of you that was based off my utility bills from 2010. And if it causes rates to be exponentially increased again, I couldn't support that either. Thank you.
Anything else from the assembly on this item?
Yeah, this is Crystal. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please, Crystal.
So I saw that we can submit mid-February. When do we expect to hear back? Would it be after the start of a new fiscal year, or what's the timeline on the applications?
I don't know the answer to that question, Scott. If he's coming up, he might have the answer.
Gotcha. And then my only other related question had to do with staff, which others have inquired about. This wouldn't create a new position. It would just add additional duties to staff that we already have on board. Is that how I understand it?
So, yeah, the staff that is currently there would be the ones taking care of it. We are short-staffed, and in my opinion, we need extra bodies regardless whether we go through NREL or not. The opportunity here to have Department of Energy laboratories come in and essentially be third-party assessors and advisors helps us to not take on the burden of all the work that they would do, for our organization. So, if we went out and hired a team of engineers and experts in particular areas to assist us, this is the kind of work that we would be getting from others. The NREL is not the only laboratory that's involved. One of the others is PNNL, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. They work hand in hand with Bonneville Power and other federal organizations, including the Department of Energy. So there are some power players here that are at the table and willing to help. That was one of the questions. The other question was timing. I don't have that directly in front of me, but I wanted to say that the turnaround time was somewhere around a month or so that we would hear back as to who was selected. It is on the NREL website if you follow that through, and all that is available. Any other questions?
Great, thank you. And Crystal, the floor is still yours if you still have any questions.
Oh, those are my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
On the motion to approve resolution 2021-04 on first and final reading, Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Timshute,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Duncan,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 on item F.
And that'll bring us to persons to be heard. This is for any item on or off of tonight's agenda.
Good evening. For the last time, Richard Ween. One of the important things that has happened this week was that the University of Leicester in England eliminated Chaucer, among other 15th century authors, from the reading list in the English department. I don't know, to me, Chaucer was the father of English literature, and we live in amazing times, and all you Beowulf fans, it's gone too. As far as the Alaska Marine Highway goes, it's a political issue. People up north don't recognize the fact that people down here need a road, even if it is on the water. 70% of the costs for the Alaska Marine Highway has to do with personnel. There are 3 unions and a myriad of rules that people have to go through, et cetera. And I read the document that relates to the governor's task force on this, and they're talking about negotiating with the unions. My opinion is you go to the unions and say, this is what we can afford. And if you don't come to the table with the realistic notion, then there may be no jobs. This is kind of we've reached that non-negotiable point, and the people who are suffering are people here. And the fact that we get 1 ferry a month or so forth, I think it's good for the barge services, but it's not good for the people of Sitka. Another thing is that the CDC just recently published their vaccination problems, and there have been 501 deaths related to the vaccine so far, with the average age of being 77. I certainly have spoke to.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I doubt the veracity of comments being made, do I bring that up or do we just continue?
I don't know that we have a mechanism to do that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I lost a few seconds, and well, I will end there. I'm not exactly sure what the issue was, as I was in the middle of speech and interrupted. So I thank you very much for your kind attention. And Chaucer is an incredible work of art. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment this evening?
Mr. Mayor, could I speak at persons to be heard?
Yes, please.
It's kind of dealing with a question that was just brought up. It's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, persons to be heard, especially on the ones that are off agenda, well, the ones that are off agenda items, as long as you're not attacking a person or being vicious in any way, you could say anything you want. You could say, I was abducted by aliens, and we're all, we need to prepare for that. I mean, it's weird, but that situation, I'm just saying, it's people's chance to speak what they feel is important, and there's no back and forth, and they're allowed to think whatever they want, just as a clarifying to help you understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie, you have a persons to be heard?
Yes, in response to that, we do have a part of our code that deals with respect for public, and if you don't believe them, that's your right, but to call them out, I can't remember where exactly it is in the code, but it's in there, and I will send you an email with the particular section.
Any other persons to be heard this evening for any item on or off tonight's agenda?
This is Crystal. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to do a persons to be heard, going a little bit of a different direction though, so bear with me. Amber Webb is a Yupik artist and activist from Dillingham, Alaska. She grew up spending time in both rural and urban settings and is a native person of mixed Yupik and Unungan descent. In 2013, she graduated from the University of Alaska Anchorage with a Bachelor of Arts in Woven Fibers with a minor in history. In 2018, she was awarded a Rasmussen Foundation Individual Project Award for a 12-foot cussbuck to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in North America. Her work visually explores the effects of colonization and the evolution and strength of Indigenous people after genocide and centuries of ongoing intergenerational trauma through portraiture and textiles. She is also exploring pictorial Yupik storytelling to tell contemporary stories of oppression, resilience, humor, changing climate, and resistance. In 2019, Amber was the Chongung Limited Shareholder Citizen of the Year, Bristol Bay Native Corporation Citizen of the Year, and she received the Alaska Federation of Natives Walter Sobloff Warrior of Light Award. Her most recent works, The Cuspuk Project, has been featured on KTUU, KTVA, First Alaskans Magazine, First Americans Magazine, and in the Juneau Empire. The first Cuspuk in the series was purchased by the Anchorage Museum, and the second Cuspuk was funded by the Rasmussen Foundation. It's not yet complete. More victims will be added to fill out the backside of the Cuspuk. It was most recently displayed at the State Capitol building in Juneau during testimony for House Resolution 10, which is a resolution in support of Savannah's Act, Violence Against Women Act, and increased financial support for law enforcement in rural Alaska. The Cuspuk was also present for conversations at the annual Alaska Federation of Natives gathering in 2019. So I just wanted to bring this information before you because we are so honored and grateful that Amber provided our community the opportunity to display her Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women statement piece in our public library. So Gunachish, Kuyana, and thank you for helping our community to better understand the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls throughout Alaska. And so I just wanted to let you know, of course, it's right next door at the public library, and we encourage you to stop by during library hours, but if you can't make it, you can also see it from the backside of the library. It's fully displayed there, and it's pretty impactful. So that's for assembly and the public who are listening so that they're aware that that opportunity has come to Sitka. Gunachish.
Thank you for that. I was not aware. Any other public participation on or off tonight's agenda? All right, that brings us to reports. So today, Southeast Conference got started. I, as well as our administrator, I believe, sat in on the meetings all day today by Zoom. Just a couple takeaways from today. Randy with the governor's office did encourage municipalities to submit requests for state land that they would like in their assets. That's something that the city has been working on for a while. So I did confirm with John that we have resubmitted those, and I don't know that that's going to go anywhere, but at least the governor is open to listening for municipal requests for state land within their boundaries. Rainforest data indicated, and I don't know what year this is from, I did not catch that, but Sitka's population is down 29 people right now, which follows a southeast trend, which is down by 3%. I would believe that this is probably pre-COVID, but I don't have that number in front of me. A lot of the data that was presented was pretty dismal on travel and leisure jobs, hotel type jobs as well. So I would expect that trend to continue through this next year. And then some good news is ATIA and the Alaska Travel Industry Association is shifting marketing from cruise to independent travelers pretty heavy this year. They understand that there's probably not going to be a cruise season, and so they're going to try and capitalize on our independent travelers. So there's going to be a statewide message coming out anyway that that Alaska could potentially welcome independent travelers this year. That's all I have for now. There are 2 more days, so I'll probably pick up a few more things on the next couple days and report on them in the next assembly meeting. John?
Thanks, Mayor. You hit most of the items from the Southeast Conference, and yes, I was also in attendance there. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Passenger Vessel Safety Act. So you've heard that phrase, it's easier to ask for forgiveness, but I needed to move quickly on this one, and I've sent you all a copy of the letter. And I believe we could come forward with a resolution for more support at our next assembly meeting, but given the timing, I moved forward with a letter to the delegation on behalf of the city concerning a possible one-year suspension of the Passenger Vessel Safety Act, otherwise known as the Jones Act, to try to save a cruise ship season. I've spoken to our lobbyist about it, and he says the resolution is not necessary, but it obviously couldn't hurt if we got more support from our elected body to push that. So there are some options on the table that our delegation is discussing with other levels of government and the Canadian government as well. So I will put a copy of that letter in the next the correspondence section of our next agenda, since I wasn't able to get, I literally wrote it and sent it out today. So the other report I have is I saw on the news today that 15.85% of the adult population has received the COVID vaccine. That's nationwide. But the good news is that Alaska made national news. We lead the way with 27.3% vaccination rate. So I'd like to thank our local partners here with the Public Health Service, folks in our EOC, Whites and Harry Race, Search, Coast Guard, Pioneer Home, and the folks here at Harrigan Centennial Hall for setting up the pods for people to receive the vaccines. Thank you.
Can I ask John a question really
Yeah,
quick
please.
about the letter and about a resolution? I started working on a resolution, but Sarah alerted me to the fact that a couple other communities within Southeast have issued or discussing issuing joint resolutions, or I think, yeah, they were both joint resolutions. Would it be helpful? I think it would be even more powerful if we got together with those communities. Would it be possible to reach out to them, and then at our next meeting, we have something similar or mirrored what Ketchikan and Saxman? No, yeah. Yeah. So would that be possible?
I think all of it's within the realm of possibilities. I think so many people have sent letters at this point. We heard it on our Southeast conference today. They've sent letters. CLIA's sending letters. CETA sent a letter from here, and the more letters, probably the better. And a joint resolution definitely couldn't hurt. So we can pursue that.
I think it would be good for us to be there as well. And I think more to the point, it would be kind of odd if we weren't.
Question for John, or okay, Brian?
The first 60 days of the year are an interesting time for the legal department. Seems in my experience, all the departments, when they start at the beginning of the year, they start organizing themselves and putting out feelers for projects they need legal support on. I get a snapshot of all the work that's coming up for the year. And it's kind of exciting times to see what everyone's doing and how hard they're working after getting back from the holiday season. So kind of a time of year that I personally like, because you get that broad perspective of what's going on rather than drilling down into one or two projects. You've got projects all over the departments. Thank you.
Liaison representatives.
I got a couple here that are kind of interesting. So we had an investment committee meeting. And actually it's doing fairly well, especially in the last few months. But also very interesting was we had a discussion, or they had a discussion with Melissa chiming in about the idea of changing the investment committee to the finance committee. And they were quite interested in doing that. And I think Melissa and John were also interested in having them do that. So as liaison, I offered to bring something forward, hopefully not in the super near future, hopefully a time when we have a fairly light agenda. But it would essentially change just kind of giving you a heads up that if we change it from the investment committee to the finance committee, they would probably add a member and adjust their terms a little bit, and add the responsibility of making recommendations to create and update municipal fiscal policy as needed. And this came up because we don't, Melissa, jump in if I'm wrong, kind of felt a little bit of frustration that we don't have a body like that for the finance committee to come in and work on things rather than having to do it always at the assembly table. And to work on strategy and planning a bit. So I think it's kind of exciting. And obviously we're going to have it all before you decide, give a heads up that that was a topic of discussion. And I see Brian look at me. Yes, of course he would be talking to you as well. And then the planning commission met, started work on reviewing the comprehensive plan. It was a good discussion, and unfortunately I had to leave to go pick up my daughter about halfway through the meeting, or like an hour and a half or so into the meeting. So I'm not sure how it wound up, but I think they were looking at not trying to, nobody's looking at doing a rewrite. It's more just spend a couple of years and going over and seeing if it needs any adjustments, things that have already been done, or maybe go on or off the list and things.
Thank you. Kevin?
Port and Harbors is scheduled to meet tomorrow. Wanted to alert the public to the agenda items. They're in unfinished business. They're going to be discussing an update to the master plan and the potential of doing some revisions to be able to better reflect the path going forward there for the harbor system. It includes a $100,000 appropriation to working on that. Mortgage rate increase or mortgage rates is going to be up for discussion, and they hope to be able to bring forward their recommendation in the budget for the assembly to consider. In new business, they'll be electing their chair and vice chair as that comes up this time of year, but then also a discussion around the possibility of bringing forward a fuel tax, and then also discussions around liverboard garbage fees. There's some concern that those fees maybe aren't right sized, so they want to talk about that.
Thank you. Kevin?
I trying to be better about my liaison reports, which I rarely give. It's not my strong point, but I attended the CETA meeting this past week. There was discussion of GPIP, which kind of falls under their wheelhouse. They mentioned that the dock out there is increasing. It's actually getting competitive for use. They're working on a port security plan for the possible 304-foot cruise ships that might be coming this summer. There was discussion about the Alaska ferry system. I just thought that was kind of pertinent with our comments here. And some things that were mentioned were the fact that there have been numerous studies on how to fix it, quote unquote, over the years since the 80s. And a lot of times it's because, well, lack of money, but there's a lot of political considerations that seem to happen. There's an Anchorage or the power base, Southeast is not very a high priority. Plus there's some unions in there that if you really want to really get in there and deal with it, you kind of have to tackle that. And so for whatever reason, there has not been the political will to really do some uncomfortable adjusting that needs to happen. And I agree with some of the things that were said, that I don't think anything ever will change until people make some tough choices there. Today, I also attended the Parks and Rec Committee meeting. I'm still kind of learning and getting my feet wet there. They were just updating on some things going on, applying for geo bonds. I guess I don't really have anything to report other than I attended the meeting. There's some dog park misuse. And there was talk about public education on park etiquette. And they're throwing out some ideas on ways to help with that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie?
The tree and landscape meets tomorrow at 5, and then the school board has narrowed their finalists to 4 candidates for superintendent, and the opportunity for the public to, so to speak, meet and greet by Zoom is this Friday at, I think, 5 o'clock. That information is on the district website. Staff is prior to general public. And so by February 20th, they're hoping to wrap up that process if all goes well.
And Valerie?
Police and Fire Commission was the last Wednesday of January. They are discussing some long-term parking issues, I think for 30 days or more, and they were going to check with Ports and Harbor, I believe, and probably come to the assembly with some recommendation because it was brought up years ago that this needed to happen, and it never made it to the assembly. And then the Library Commission was last Wednesday. That will, they are discussing going fine-free, and I'm sure we'll see reports on that. And then LEPC meets on Thursday this week, if it's not canceled, via Zoom. Thanks.
And I think that covers us. All right, Sarah?
Yeah, I'll go over our vacancy list for boards, commissions and committees. The Animal Hearing Board, Building Department Appeals Board, Employment Relations Board, Gary Paxton Industrial Park Board of Directors, Health Needs and Human Services Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, Library Commission, Local Emergency Planning Commission, Port and Harbors Commission, and Tree and Landscape Committee. And also just a quick reminder of upcoming assembly meetings. There's a special budget meeting on enterprise funds, February 18th. That's next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, or week from this Thursday. And then the regular meeting, February 23rd, there will be a work session at 5 p.m. And then a special meeting, February 25th, and that's regarding school funding.
Kevin?
I had one other report to put in there. So February 17th from 6 to 7 p.m. there's a virtual open house regarding the seaplane based environmental assessment. It's the public viewing or discussion of it. If anybody wants to read it or take a look at it, it's available at dowell.com/outreach, and you can find the link there for the whole EA. And I have one other question, I guess, for John on other things going on. You mentioned earlier that the Climate Action Task Force is starting to spool up, get ready to start meeting. Can you give us a little bit more information about when and where and whatnot?
February 16th is the first meeting. I've seen a draft agenda that Melissa brought to me today, and her and I kind of discussed how to help out a new group and how to get organized and set up. So I believe it's 6 p.m., Sarah. 6 p.m. on the 16th will be their first meeting, and we're going to kind of walk them through, and then they'll run it from there.
Is that here?
I think it is here.
So are assembly members allowed to attend that? I know it may be a dumb question, but just to view, just to watch?
Yes, if you're planning to attend, if you can let me know, just so I can advertise appropriately.
Okay,
There's gonna be
I'd
more.
like to attend just to watch.
Any other reports this evening? All right, that wraps up the meeting for this evening. Motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Assembly. We are adjourned.
Hey, Steve, I meant to talk to you last meeting.